There you go, and welcome to Let's Talk Native on the LTN Radio Network. It is October. What am I doing here, man? I got something on here. All right, there we go. Just getting my levels right here, I guess. All right, it is October 13th. It is Friday the 13th in October, and I want to welcome you to the LTN Radio Network. This program breaks all the rules for Native radio. No buffalo speeches, no mystic healing, no special Indian prayers. We tackle the real issues facing Native people with a look back at our glorious and our grave history, a tough look at where we're at now, and look forward to our ongoing battles for sovereignty and autonomy. Let's Talk Native is produced in association with Iroquois Promotions on the LTN Radio Network, streaming live from the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation, and simulcast and or rebroadcast on the Gwe, CKWE in Tandanega. You can find us at www.ltnradionet.com. And, of course, you can find us on Facebook. We stream live on Facebook with our special camera, our Mevo camera, streaming live with our with Let's Talk Native on Facebook. And, of course, we also repost the show after our live streaming. And, of course, we repost it again on our YouTube channel. I am John Kane. I'm your show's host and producer. And I have Jake Proud in studio, who is manning the cameras for the video and for our YouTube channel. I want to thank our studio engineer, Kelly McMillan, for our setup here. And I want to acknowledge our opening song. Our opening song was by Jan Michael Looking Wolf, Arms of an Angel. The tune surprise seems familiar to you, as it should. But I'm sure you've never heard it performed on a traditional native flute. And, of course, we're going to be hearing a bit of that kind of thing tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is the Native American Music Awards. It's the 17th Native American Music Awards, the NAMMYs, as we call it. It is going to take place at the Seneca Niagara Casino. And that's, again, tomorrow, October 14th, 7 p.m. is when it starts. Look, if you can't make it to the Seneca Niagara Casino, and I certainly encourage you to do so, it's an opportunity to see, some of the best Native performers. Not all of them, but we get a fair share of Native performers that make it out to this event each year. The Seneca Nation has been hosting the Native American Music Awards for over 10 years. And continues to do so, and is doing it at their flagship facility up in Niagara Falls. But it is an opportunity for you to see some of the best Native performers on the continent, and we've even had performers from South America, as well as obviously north of the imaginary line into Canada. Some great artists, and in all genres of music. So even beyond the traditional music that you may be accustomed to, traditional flute and what people regard as powwow music or longhouse music. Yeah, you'll hear some of that, but you're also going to hear what has become a part of our culture. The blues artists. You're going to hear the rock and the folk and all of it. It's a real opportunity to see not only some of the best performers perform, but to see them acknowledged for that performance at the Native American Music Awards. Look, and if you can't make it there, as I was starting to say, you can catch it online. You can go and register to watch it for free online. And you need to go to www.singlefeathermedia.com/live. So that's www.singlefeathermedia.com/live. And there you'll register and you'll get a chance to watch the awards. I'm interested, and in fact, I hope some of the folks who are listening to the show who aren't going to make it up to Niagara Falls do so, because I want to hear how the online viewing of this went. This is something that I'm one of the ones who advocate strongly for the Native American Music Awards. I've gotten to know Ellen Bello and her husband Don Kelly, who have been at this for a very long time, who've dedicated a good part of their lives. I mean, Ellen was a publicist who represented a few musicians, and ultimately made her own decision about doing more to promote Native music when she realized there was I mean, there wasn't even a category for it. First, one of the things she did was she lobbied for there to be a category of Native music, or a category at the Grammys that would at least acknowledge Native music, and she was successful at doing that. And then she ventured off to start the Native American Music Association, and ultimately create an awards night that would acknowledge these great performers. So I praise the work that she's done, and it hasn't always been easy. Obviously, there came a time where an awful lot of these awards nights and these awards banquets, presentations, there became a lot of them. Not very many for natives, but a lot of them in general. And so it became a bit of a crowded field, and trying to get attention to a specific awards night that would acknowledge Native artists, just like it is difficult for Native artists to pierce the industry in general. It was also difficult for this for an awards night to pierce the industry. And and I give praise to Ellen and Don for working so diligently at this. But again, it hasn't always been easy. I always felt like the Seneca Nation really should have stepped up and made this event their signature event of the year. And I'm still hoping that they move in that direction, and that significant investment is made in this event and throughout the year to promote Native artists, on the radio station, at their facilities, and perhaps even, I've gone so far as to suggest, wouldn't it be great if the Seneca Nation established itself, its facilities, its territory as essentially the Native Nashville, where this is a place that Native artists go to be heard, to be seen, to get known, to break into the business and to make a successful career. It's an unfortunate thing that for the music industry, there is this kind of direct connection between performing and the bar scene. I mean, that is where country music and rock music. I mean, there's this connection to that underbelly of entertainment where it's tied to nightclubs and bars, and when you consider the challenges that all cultures, but certainly people of color, face with with substance abuse and that kind of stuff, it'd be great to know that there's another place, there's another way that an artist can be seen and can be heard without necessarily it needing to be at a drinking establishment, so to speak. And then again, I'm not putting it down. I'm not trying to put down facilities that provide an opportunity for live bands to perform, but it's fairly one-dimensional, and it would be great to see a better opportunity for Native artists, and especially as you think about young Native artists who maybe that's not the lifestyle of choice, and it would be great. It would be a very good thing to see the Seneca Nation, who has already made a fairly notable commitment to the Native American Music Awards, but for them to almost take it as a partnership between the Seneca Nation and the Native American Music Association, and again build themselves up as almost a clearinghouse for Native performers. That's my view. We're not quite there yet, but tomorrow night gives a hint to that, and gives an indication on just what is possible. And when you see some of the talent, and Jen, Michael Looking Wolf will be performing tomorrow night at the Native American Music Awards. He is also up for a couple of the categories. In years past, I've had the opportunity to even present a few awards. Actually, the last two Native American Music Awards, I got to present the final category, which was kind of cool. In fact, maybe I'll even play. I don't know, maybe I'll even play one of the tunes that I was able to provide an award to. We'll see as we go through the program. But I wanted to give special attention. I got my Native American Music Awards hat on. I got my Native American Music Awards T-shirt on, and I figured I'm going to do what I can to promote it's just tomorrow night, so I think it's important that people are aware of it. If you haven't gone, I actually gave a couple of pairs of tickets away on my Let's Talk Native website or group page today. So I've got Brenda Clench and Robert Delamonte who stepped up when I offered the tickets on Facebook, and so they will be going to the awards as well. I look forward to it. My friend Shawnee Rice might be making it from New York. At least the last time I talked to her about it, she was. So she is my co-host for my show in New York City. So perhaps if you come to the event last night or tomorrow night, you'll get a chance to meet Shawnee as well. My wife Brenda will be at my side. So it's also a great opportunity to not just see these artists, but to socialize with them. Because you'll mingle with these folks, not just as you see them receive awards, but in the break time, in the intermission. These guys they'll have their CDs available. There's an opportunity for you to purchase their music, which is also something that is sometimes difficult to realize. I mean, I know people are familiar with buying music on iTunes and downloading music in various ways, but there's still something about picking up the CD and seeing the artwork that they provided for the music's cover. I mean, I think there's still something to be said for that. And so then there'll be T-shirts and hats and various Native American Music Awards. What do they call it? Merch, I guess. So there'll be some of that there as well. But and I suspect the artists will have some of their stuff besides their CDs. So and it's also an opportunity and a reason to dress up. I mean, I had to take my wife out shopping today so she can get a new dress for the occasion. So I didn't get a new dress. I'll wear an old suit. But it should be a good time. So I look forward to it. Anybody listen to the show. Take the opportunity and make it to Niagara Falls, and at very least, do go online. Again, you can go to www.singlefeathermedia.com/live, and then you can watch the event live tomorrow night, starting at 7 p.m. So look forward to it. Hey, there are some things in the news that I want to talk about, especially since Monday. Monday was was Indigenous Peoples Day for many. It was also Columbus Day for many, and and I got some of the reports, even about Andrew Cuomo participating in the parade in New York City, and he said something that I have to, I've talked about it a little bit over the last few days, and I've got to bring it up again. He had suggested that the idea of celebrating Christopher Columbus and Indigenous peoples at the same time, that it could be done, and that it was appropriate, that they were not mutually exclusive celebrations, and he said this in response to those people who say the state shouldn't celebrate Christopher Columbus. They shouldn't celebrate Columbus Day. That New York City shouldn't celebrate Columbus Day. That the Columbus statue should come down. He said, no. We can still celebrate Christopher Columbus and celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. And again, he said they are not mutually exclusive celebrations. And I beg to differ. They are mutually exclusive. Then there's a reason they're mutually exclusive. And unlike much of the media who would suggest that that there was some sort of indirect effect of Christopher Columbus's quote unquote discovery that would result in terrible things happening to Indigenous peoples. They seem to ignore the fact that Christopher Columbus himself was personally responsible. Look, I'm not going to go through this, spend a whole show on Christopher Columbus again, but hearing the governor suggest that you could somehow still heroize Christopher Columbus and honor Indigenous people, knowing that the Indigenous people that Christopher Columbus came into contact with were eradicated by him in his, much of it in his lifetime. I mean, there were 250,000 Native people that he came into encounter with, and he brutalized those people. I mean, and I've talked about some of the crimes that he committed, but to suggest that you could honor those two, Indigenous people and Christopher Columbus almost at the same time, in the same way, in the same manner, is To me, it would be likening the idea of honoring Adolf Hitler, and the Jewish people at the same time. Like somehow you could talk about, well, there was good that Adolf Hitler did, and it should not go unnoticed. Yeah, there were these terrible things he did, but you can ignore those things. But in fact, we'll ignore those things, but instead we'll just honor Jewish people. No, you can't do that. You can't heroize Adolf Hitler and honor Jewish people at the same time. In fact, heroizing Adolf Hitler is a slap in the face at Jewish people. I mean, and that's pretty well understood. I mean, I know not everybody agrees with that. There's some haters out there, and Holocaust deniers and all that other stuff. And I'm not going to get into that. But the basic idea of propping up and heroizing an individual who committed crimes against a specific people, and then saying it's okay to celebrate both the perpetrator and the victims of those things at the same time. It's again, I know people cringe when I say it, but that's a racist view to have. So I had to address it, and I wanted to address it today. Look, earlier today, Jake and I produced a video, and it'll be available tonight, probably after the show sometime. And it's my explanation about certain elements of racism that still seem to be missed by people. And I'm not saying that it is the first and last word on defining or explaining racism, but I wanted to take a bit of a stab at explaining it, and I look forward to some of the feedback, and there's more that we could do, but I don't know, it's about a 15, 16, 18-minute video or something like that. So it's not too long, but I think to spend to do a whole show on it, you could. I mean, I think we could do a 1 hour, we could do a 2 hour show talking about elements and teaching what racism really means and how to distinguish it from prejudice and discrimination and bigotry, and how racism is embedded in not just the American culture, but Canadian and European culture, and this whole push towards nationalization, this nationalist view that so many countries there are struggling with, including the United States and Germany and so many other countries, Great Britain. How much it is tied directly to this notion of racism and of superiority, of white supremacy. So we did this video, and again, we'll have it out later tonight, but certainly by tomorrow, as you look through, and we'll start promoting it quite a bit, but tomorrow. I want people to take a look at it, because I do mention specifically some of the comments that have come out of somebody like Andrew Cuomo, and I think it's important that people realize it. Another thing that happened, and I think I even mentioned it in the video as well. There was a letter to the editor in the Buffalo News this week, and some individual, in fact, I think that it was Aaron Walker was the name associated with the letter to the editor in the Buffalo News. He talked about how much the state screwed up, how much they dropped the ball on the revenue sharing debate. I mean, he concurs that the state is in a tough spot, and that that they're probably going to lose an arbitration, that the language is kind of clear. But he makes it sound like it was just a huge blunder. Of course, I disagree with that. I don't think it was a mistake. And I've said so. I mean, I don't think it's a mistake that the Pataki administration thought a 14-year payment term for revenue sharing was sufficient for the state to to get themselves involved in gaming and no longer expect a payment from Native people based on an exclusivity. I think they knew there wasn't going to be an exclusivity. I think they knew there wasn't one from the start, frankly, and they thought anything they can get out of the Senecas for what sounded like an exclusivity on paper was essentially free money. I mean, again, I got to say it again. The state was prohibited from doing the very gaming that they say they were giving exclusivity to the Senecas for. I mean, which is absurd, because if the state couldn't do it anyway, then what did they give up? They didn't give up anything. They couldn't do Class 3 slot machines. They couldn't do table games. They couldn't do Vegas-style casinos in New York State. And in fact, it wouldn't be till late in 2013 that they would change their constitution authorizing them to build a couple of state licensed casinos, which only came online after the 14 years of payments expired. They just came online since January in this year. So the reality is the state didn't didn't agree not to do gaming for really for just by virtue of this exclusivity arrangement. They couldn't do it anyway. But again, the letter to the editor in the Buffalo News didn't just stop there by condemning or calling down the governor or the state in general for mismanaging this thing. They actually used language that, again, I think is clearly racist. They talked about how it was wrong for the state to allow Senecas to do, or natives to do gaming, ignoring the fact that the state didn't have they didn't allow the gaming. They were allowed to participate in gaming through a federal, the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, the federal law. But gaming is possible because of our sovereignty, not because of permission from the state. That view that what we do on our territories, we do at the pleasure of the governor of the state of New York, or the legislature, or perhaps even local elected leaders, that is a racist view. And the reason I say it's racist is because it's about power. That is my point. It is about believing the state has power over us. And why do they have power? Because we're Native people. Because we're not Americans. Because we're not white people. We are not a part of them. We're not a part of that whole liberty and justice for all. We are a different group of people that many believe, including apparently Aaron Walker, that we are beneath the state. I don't even know if they think that they are beneath the state, but they clearly think Native people are. And he didn't just stop there. He went so far as to say the state should replace the Indian casinos with state licensed casinos. Yeah, no, he really said that. So this guy, and of course the Buffalo News prints this stuff. They're willing to print, and there was some confusion. I wrote a response to this, and I said, isn't it great that that racism is so strong within the Buffalo News staff? And the reason I said that is because on the top, when you first see this this opinion piece, it says by staff on the top. Then down on the bottom it says Aaron Walker Amherst. So it was unclear to me that it was written by a reader or just a local, that it wasn't the Buffalo News writing an opinion piece. So I mean, I said that I stand corrected on that. But regardless, the newspaper prints this stuff, and they look, I know they have general disclaimers when opinion pieces are written. But I got to tell you, when I saw what this guy was actually packaging up, what I saw, what this guy was actually saying, was that somehow the state can just shut us down. They have the authority. He believes that the taxpayer and the state of New York somehow have this power over Native people. That power thing, that superiority, that is the underlying racism that I talk about. That's the unique racism that Native people experience. So I mean, I responded to that, and I don't know, maybe after the break I'll pull out some of the details of some of that exchange. But this is what is missed in all of this. I mean, it was only a week ago that I was on the Capitol Press Room with Susan Arbetter on the Albany. Actually, it's on WCNY. It's but it's broadcast throughout the state, and including out here in Western New York on the public radio station WBFO. But I do the Capitol Press Room from time to time, and I on this occasion it wasn't just with Susan Arbetter. It was with Robert Batson, who is a professor of law at the Albany Law School, but he also was the Indian expert hired by by governors back to Hugh Carey, including Mario Cuomo and the Republican governor George Pataki. And we talked about some of the state of relations between Native people and Native peoples and the state of New York, and much to my surprise that he was very much in agreement with my comments and the view that I express not just relating to the Seneca gaming issue, but even the state's position on interfering with native-to-native trade as it relates to tobacco and the tobacco trade and that kind of thing. So here's a guy who's not one of our people. He's not one of us. I mean, he's actually one of the state's guys. Works in the state university, teaches state and federal law, and actually specializes on government law. His view of the gaming compact was that the Senecas are probably right. His view was that the state is in a pretty weak position. We talked about the four corners doctrine of contract law. That for any, and I've got a bunch of folks from Niagara Falls who've been weighing in. In fact, I joined a group page called Niagara Falls Uncensored, and I posted some of my commentaries on there, along with the commentaries that have either been in the Buffalo News or the Niagara Gazette. And I've mixed it up even with a couple of the local politicians and people who are involved in local politics. And they're really pinning their hopes that Niagara Falls will realize the same revenue flows they've gotten, which is the 25% of the revenue generated, or 25% of what the state gets comes back to the municipalities here. And Niagara Falls is essentially the Seneca Niagara Casino is the flagship enterprise of the Seneca Nation, and it is the one that generates the most revenue. So Niagara Falls is hoping they're going to get 10 or 20 million out of revenue sharing. I don't think they will, and I think it's pretty clear that they won't. That's what Robert Batson and other folks have weighed in on. But in this debate, we've been going back and forth on a bunch of these forums, including Facebook, and I hear people trying to make the argument about the state's position, and it's painful. It's painful to see how much there are how people are pinning their hopes on the state to persevere and continue to suck money out of the Seneca Nation, ignoring the fact that in order for Niagara Falls to get their $10 or $20 million out of the state gaming revenue sharing program, the state's going to have to suck over $100 million out of the area. And over the next 7 years, that could be another $1 billion that'll get sucked out of Western New York. And the fact that you might have folks in Niagara Falls or Buffalo or Salamanca hoping that continues, that's like not seeing big picture for small picture. They want their $5 or $6 million in Buffalo and Niagara Falls, or Buffalo and Salamanca. They want their $10 or $15 million out of Niagara Falls, ignoring the fact that in order for them to get that under the previous arrangement, hundreds of millions of dollars is going to have to flow to Albany for tens of millions to come back. Look, we're at the bottom of the hour, so we'll take another song. Here's one. This is a song by a guy who was at the last Native American Music Awards, Spencer Batiste, and I'm not sure if he'll be there tonight or tomorrow night, but it's a good song. It's another example of the diversity of Native music that you will hear at the Native American Music Awards.
It gets harder every day. My heart drowns with just a mention of your name, and I try to get to you, but I don't know what to say. This feeling just can't seem to go away. All of this time, wondering why, am I just living in a fantasy, waiting for you to tell me I'm not the only one. Standing alone, you're watching me fall. I never thought that this would be goodbye. I'll let you go. I'm stupid in love, stupid in love. I imagine what I'd say to you if I ever saw your face, but I know that words would just get in the way. And I went through it 1,000 times just living in a fantasy, waiting for you to tell me I'm not the only one? Standing alone, you're watching me fall. I never thought that this would be goodbye. I'll let you go. I'm stupid in love, stupid in love. Please don't let me wake up. Let me lay right next to you. Just a minute more before I let you go. All of this time, wondering why. Am I just living in a fantasy, waiting for you to tell me I'm not the only one? Standing alone, you're watching me fall. I never thought that this would be goodbye. I'll let you go. I'm stupid in love, stupid in love. Please don't let me wake up. Let me lay right next to you. Just a minute more before I let you go.
All right, that's Spencer Batiste, and that's "Stupid in Love," and he performed that song last year at the Native American Music Awards, and again, he and his brother actually did another piece that was quite good. It had a combination of his vocals doing, kind of a more of a pop sound, and his brother's doing a bit of a more of a hip hop um, collaboration with him. It was some pretty good stuff. So yeah, again, that's the kind of stuff that you can expect to hear and see at the Native American Music Awards. So look forward to that. Hey, there's on another note relating to music. There's a film out there. It's called Rumble: The Indians That Rocked the World. And it's kind of a tribute. Well, it is. It's a tribute to the contributions of Native artists in contemporary music, not just rock either. I mean, just in general. It's a film, and they showed it last night at the theater in Salamanca. And I know friends of mine like Ross and Holly John had gone down to the to see the screening. It's the first time they'd seen the film in its entirety, anyway. And it's really quite a remarkable film. I'm going to actually show the film in Long Island next month. At the end of next month, I'm going to show it in at the Cinema Arts Center in Huntington, New York, and out on Long Island. And just to give you a flavor for this, because if you get a chance to see it, and it has made the rounds a little bit, I decided let me cut away, and I want to play the audio for the trailer to this. To this film, and perhaps you can get a little bit of a flavor for kind of what's I'm not even sure if that's the right trailer now that I'm thinking about it. That might be the trailer to I think I've got the wrong trailer pulled up, because I had a couple of trailers. I have one for More Than a Word, which is a film about the Redskins. You know what? I'll pull that one up anyway. Maybe while I'm playing that, I can find the other, and we'll pull it up. But let me go ahead and play this audio trailer first, and just in case it's the right the right one, we'll give it a shot. Let me see here.
It's been said that an image is worth 1,000 words. A concept implying that a single visual element can replace a multitude of descriptive factors, that one image can carry meaning and definition far more adequately than any verbal or written description. In the case of our own definitions, that is, as Native American people, why have we been reduced to a single word, a single silhouette? Redskin. One word, 2 syllables. Labeled in many dictionaries as a noun, dated or offensive, and simply defined an American Indian.
Every so often, the press discovers Native peoples.
A protest in North Dakota against a major oil pipeline continues to grow.
How is it that they're able to proceed in the way they have? They believe their own racist stereotypes about Native people.
It was never intended to be racist. 20 years ago, you didn't hear about any of this.
If we're still considered these kind of like headdress caricatures living on the plains and, never went past 1900, that doesn't really allow us into like this, modern dialogue where we have all these issues that are happening.
So Indians are wrapped into the fiber of America from the very, very beginning.
There's a lot of complex history with DC, this football team, with race, its fan base.
I'm an Indigenous person, I'm an Indigenous woman, and I have a voice, and that's the strongest thing that I have.
They don't look like Indians to me. This is what happens in settler societies. They take old European rituals and practices and beliefs, they graft them onto new sort of symbol systems around Indians.
In Jewish history, we have been called so many names, and the names connote inferiority.
You can't force honor on people.
All right. Well, that's that's the promo to More Than a Word. If you get a chance to see that one, by all means, see it. Unfortunately, as I'm scrambling through here, looking, I was pretty sure I had audio for the trailer to Rumble. I'll pull it up and we'll play it next time. I think it's important people realize that there is such a major contribution to music from Native people, and for those of us who are fans of some of our own people in this industry, even fans of the folks who haven't made it big, we become very aware of the skill set. I mean, I play Murray Porter, for instance, all the time here on my show. I'm a huge fan of Murray Porter. I'm a fan not just because I enjoy his music, but I enjoy the messaging from the music. But when you understand that there are the Stevie Salises, and that there are the Robbie Robertsons, and there are the Charlie Lowrys, and the Pure Fays, and the Buffy St. Marie's, these people who have impacted Native music or the music industry, even though we represent a very small percentage of that success in that industry, the influence of Native performers has been significant, and I think the film shows that. This is a film that was produced out of the Smithsonian, the NMAI, the National Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C. There are folks that we know that have been involved in this film, and I think there's even perhaps even a peek from some of from so many of our native territories, and peoples who we many of us are close to that are in the film. So again, I think it's a film that's worth checking out. And as I get more information, like I said, I'll pull the audio for the trailer and we'll play it on the next program. But I think it's important that people realize just how much contribution to contemporary music Native people have played, and this involves even some of the traditional music, or not just traditional music, but standards. I mean, opera singers. There have been people in all of the genres of music that have been affected by Native performers, and I think it's important that people get a chance to see some of that. And unfortunately, it as indicated in the film, it wasn't always necessarily a good thing to put it out front that you were Native. So that wasn't necessarily worn on the shirt sleeve of some of these performers. Jimi Hendrix, most people don't realize that he had a strong Native ancestry. Native American Music Awards helps bring some of that stuff to light. But this film, I think, also does some of that. So it's good for me to mention this movie. And again, it's called Rumble. You can look it up. You can pull it up and check the trailer on it. I think it is an important film, and I think it may change the way you view, at some capacity, at some level, it may change the way you view the contributions to the art of music that Native people have had. So I want to mention that. Hey, before we get too close to the end of the show, I also got to acknowledge my friends and my sponsors. I want to acknowledge Ross and Holly John and the RJE family of businesses, Eric White and ERW Enterprises, my good friends Ed Schindler and Cynthia Trice, Neville Spring, Sugar Montour. These are folks that really help this program exist. I've got to acknowledge, because I've gotten some support from the Seneca Nation, and probably in somewhat to demonstrate their appreciation for how much I've advocated in this battle with the state over the revenue sharing and the gaming revenue sharing, and I'm pleased to have had that work acknowledged and my contribution to the debate acknowledged, and so I also want to acknowledge the support that I've gotten from the Seneca Nation. I also want to thank Unity Stream and Apache Radio Net for providing our streaming. I also want to thank CKWE, both for the simulcast and the rebroadcast, as well as Netroots Radio, Real People's Media, and Indigenous Resistance Radio for carrying Let's Talk Native on their networks. And I also want to thank all of you individually who share the show, who share the commentary. I mean, there are things that I'm posting on Facebook and on Twitter, and all of you who share a show, share a video, share an audio track, share a commentary. You are helping, even if you're not verbalizing some of this stuff yourself, you are at least sharing the opportunity that I take or that I make to weigh in on on some of these controversial issues. And again, not all of it's controversial. I mean, it is fun sometimes to just do a show that's featuring just music and addressing the contributions, not just the conflicts that we are involved in. And so I think it is really important that we step up. And as far as my responses to some of the articles that are either in the Buffalo News or the Niagara Gazette or any place, even some of them that I've seen in some of the New York papers, I think it's important that we weigh in. And I know not everybody feels comfortable doing so. I do. I'm perfectly comfortable in tackling what I think is either a racist diatribe that's being put out on in the mainstream media, or even if it's just factually wrong. I mean, not everything is racist, but there plenty that is. And again, when I see Native people being treated as some sort of inferior being by the media or by politicians, when I see us being dismissed as irrelevant, as almost somehow less than the folks who have access to the media, that is the racism I'm talking about. But there's also some things that just make it out there that it's just factually wrong. There are good news stories that come out of our territories. There are things that Native people that do on a daily basis, and whether it's in areas like music and art, or whether it's just plain helping people. I mean, there is plenty of that happens. We believe, and part of the reason that I advocate so strongly for our autonomy and our distinction is that we believe that we have something to contribute in addressing some of the modern problems that frankly many people on the globe are facing. Environmental issues. I'm not saying that we have the solution to stop global warming, but we may have an approach that says, here's what we need to do to prepare. Here's what we need to do to be more responsible. And I think that's part of what we try to advocate here. It's not just about pointing out the mistakes of others. Frankly, I'm prepared to point out the mistakes that our people have made. Not all of the assimilation that has been forced upon Native people continues to be forced upon our people. Yet we still find ourselves in the throes of that. When I look at the conflicts that happen, in so many places like Hawaii or now in Puerto Rico, there are a lot of people who are indifferent about, their identity and whether they should be asserting themselves as Ganakamali in Hawaii, or as Hawaiians, or as Puerto Ricans, or as Taino, or as opposed to, trying to step up and insist that they be treated equally as Americans. That's a debate that needs to happen. It needs to happen. And I think if you look at the real diversity in culture, I mean, the whole idea should not be about trying to homogenize all human beings so there is no distinction. That's not the solution to racism. The solution to racism isn't to become colorblind or blind, period, or deaf. The solution isn't just tolerance either. Tolerance implies, putting up with something you don't like. That's not the answer. The thing is, the solution to this stuff is respect and appreciating that there are different perspectives. Look, I offer a perspective, and there's no question about that. I offer a perspective on everything. I offer a view and opinion that may not be widely held. There are some of the things that I've expressed have become more acceptable as people have heard it. I've got friends that I've been at great odds with on a number of issues, and not just Native people and non-Native people. So I oftentimes will express a view that at first glance, can seem offensive to some people. But then I try to have a conversation about it. And it's not just my conversation. I'm saying if I hear a view that I don't agree with, I'm going to be better served by hearing out that view and trying to understand that perspective than just rejecting it out of hand. Even for some of the real racist stuff that I don't like. I mean, I have tried. I've tried to understand what a Trump voter, what a Trump supporter must be going through. And I've tried to understand how they could ignore and be so complicit in all the bad, all the racist, all the bigotry, all the misogyny, all the the sexist views and the ignorance that is associated with a guy like Donald Trump, because there's some sort of silver lining on the other side. I don't know. But you have to do that a little bit. I mean, when I look at this conflict that continues to rage on and is certainly going to be interesting this weekend with football over taking a knee. When I listen to a Michael Caputo sounding off about how the problem with taking a knee during the national anthem is that so many people like himself can't get past it being a demonstration, regardless of its intent, that it somehow is flies in the face of veterans, of wounded, the ravages of war and all that other stuff. Even though it has nothing to do with that. I hear that when I try to hear that perspective, it doesn't just come across as disingenuous. I mean, it comes across as a complete false narrative. But I have to hear it. I have to hear because the only way that I can understand somebody being so hateful about somebody taking a knee during the national anthem, especially when you know what the intention is. When you know the reason Colin Kaepernick took a seat and then ultimately took a knee was because he could not support a flag and a pledge and an anthem that talks about freedom and liberty and justice for all and all that stuff when there wasn't any. Or when there wasn't enough, when there isn't equity. While racism is so alive and well in the United States, there is not liberty and justice for all. There is not freedom for all. So what better place to take a stand, or a knee, I should say, than when that song is playing? That has its own racist overtones associated with it. So when I hear somebody say, you're disrespecting the veterans, no, absolutely not. But I have to hear the perspective. For me to continue to disagree with that perspective, I've got to know where it comes from. And I also have to be able to hear the veterans who say, no, I support the idea of taking a knee. I support the right to protest. And the fact that, and the crazy thing is, if there was any way that somebody could directly associate either the playing of the anthem at a sporting event or the flying of the flag at a sporting event, that the doing so is directly associated with wounded veterans or veterans who have, sacrificed their lives, which it isn't. I mean, the whole idea of quote unquote patriotism is not just about war. And if it is, well, that's a whole nother problem. If the whole idea of being patriotic to your country means you have to support war and you have to support veterans and you have to, ignore any of the shortcomings of the country so you don't come across or you don't have any kind of appearance of being disrespectful to the war machine, well, frankly, that's part of the problem. But you have to hear it. You have to hear the perspective. And that's why, I listen to radio and I do read print and I do, watch the videos from some of the broadcasts. I do have to see what the perspective. I have to understand what somebody who is who practices different faiths, whether it's Judaism or Islam or Christianity. I have to know some of that stuff. I can't sit up here and talk about condemning a Christopher Columbus or a pope or a president, especially if they're wrapping themselves in the American flag or the Bible or anything else. If I don't understand what some of those things mean, I mean, I don't even know how many Americans today could tell you what the flag represents. Oh, you'll get all kinds of platitudes about it, but 13 stripes and 50 stars. I mean, it's the original colonies. It is a symbol of colonization, colonialism. That's what the stripes represent, and the states and the stars represent the states. So, how did they become these so-called United States? Was it all consensus? Did Hawaii agree to become a U.S. state? And then what about the territories who are not afforded that? I mean, I just heard Trump say something today in the media talking about that he spoke to the president of the U.S. Virgin Islands. And of course, the immediate response is, "You moron! You are the president of the U.S. Virgin Islands. He's the president. The Virgin Islands, the U.S. Virgin Islands, are part of the United States. He may have talked to the governor of the Virgin Islands, but the fact that he still has it entrenched in his mind that places like Puerto Rico or the Virgin Islands are not part of the United States." It almost, to me, this is where it comes back to, like, as a Native person, it's like Puerto Rico or the people of Puerto Rico, the Puerto Ricans or the Hawaiians or, the people of the U.S. Virgin Islands, they're looked at as a burden. And as a Native person, an indigenous person, or that is the way so many Americans view us, that we're just somehow a burden on their tax base because we're not paying, or in Puerto Rico's case, because they have a debt that has been accumulated because of the vulture capitalism that took place there, that somehow Puerto Rico is just a problem to the average taxpayer. And that's the way Donald Trump is communicating this stuff. The way he has been dogging Puerto Rico. I mean, in what world does the so-called elected leader of a country, when they see a territory that they have a responsibility to, a people they have a responsibility to, ravaged by a hurricane, to the point where an island, or where the territory is essentially destroyed, and still seizes on the opportunity to insult those people? I mean, it's incredible. But as I say this, it's not just Trump that has those views. There's a wide swath of American people who share that view. That's one of the things that I became aware of as I was responding to some of the things that I've seen in the Buffalo News or in the Niagara Gazette, or some of the stuff that I've heard on television. When I talk about the complicity of institutional racism that the media is involved in, and then realizing that by the media being complicit, they make a wide a large part of the population, American population, also complicit in that racism because they're influenced by what the media says and how and what they do and how they do it. So if you don't call out a politician for saying something that is inappropriate, if you don't call them out, and so what if a politician like Trump is going to call it fake news or deride the press? That's the job of the press. But you know what? The job of the press isn't just to deride Republicans. They should be going after the Democrats who do the same thing, because there's been some pretty racist things that have come out of guys like Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, and Andrew Cuomo. But again, I think it's important that we understand where they come from, and I think the reason that Native people understand some of these this brand of racism that is unique to them is because they know what those words mean. When somebody says this, Native shouldn't have been allowed to do gaming. I mean that is clearly about power and oppression. That is clearly about a subservient role that is perceived by so many Americans that Native people, and people of color should have. I've seen a lot of memes out there that suggest, it's not how a black man protests that most Americans find problematic. And by most, I mean white people. It's that they're protesting. And when it came to wealthy athletes, it's almost like because they've made money that they lost their right to protest. Oh, you got nothing to protest about. You're a football player. You get paid millions. And to call a black man a hypocrite because even though he's made money, that he's still willing to protest against injustice. I mean, that's an incredible. I mean, that is among the most racist kinds of perspectives that I've seen offered. And I'll tell you, there's a ton of it. There's a ton of it. So this is kind of what we're faced with, and that's why the whole idea of having the conversations that we have here. And look, like I said, I know that everybody's going to agree with every perspective that I offer here or that is offered here. But I just think it's important that people understand that they just need to understand that there are perspectives different than their own. That while they don't necessarily have to embrace them fully, they just need to know that they're out there. Look, again, Native American Music Awards tomorrow night. The show, I think the broadcast on singlefeathermedia.com/live. The stream will start at 7:00. I'm not exactly sure when the show will open its curtains, but it's sometime after 7 p.m. So if you're going out there tomorrow night, I look forward to seeing you. I'll be out there with my wife, and I know there'll be plenty of people there to mingle with and socialize with. So I look forward to it. So hopefully we'll see you there. If not, we'll be back here on Monday. Again, look for my my video on Let's Talk Native TV. That's our YouTube channel. Let's Talk Native TV. Jake and I worked on that video today, and it should be up later tonight. And I'm anxious to get some feedback on it. So look for that, and we'll talk more on Monday. We'll go out with a little bit of Logan Stats. Another guy. This is a guy who won an award last year at the Native American Music Awards, and here's one appropriately. We'll play Taxman.